I want to talk a little bit about my journey. And I started running in somewhere around 2013 with a group called Hyderabad Runners, and I was working full time with Deloitte at that point of time. And when I met this group of runners there, and I saw people with common people who had other responsibilities, like they were working in the corporate, some of them from different walks of life, but they also had families, they had regular responsibilities. But they found this activity of running, right? And Hyderabad Runners started as a small group and kind of promoted running in the city and helped people to get fit and maintain an active lifestyle while while meeting a lot of people from different walks of life. And for me, when I started off, it was less of a sport, but it was more of a way to socialize with people. It was my club there, and that's how my journey started. I'm going to talk a little bit about the sport called triathlon. I mean, I started off as a runner, and then I met people who were cycling in the city, and I met people who were swimming, and then I figured out this sport called triathlon. So how many of you out here are involved in any of these three sports? Running, so you're mostly runners? How many runners here? Okay. How many cyclists? Okay, quite a few of them. And swimmers or multi-sport athletes like triathletes or duathletes? Not a lot, okay. So I think most of you out here are kind of like focused on one sport, right? And do most of you do it on a regular basis? Let's say among cyclists? No, right? So today, probably I'll talk a little bit about, the world of triathlon and how I began my journey. So there you see, this is somewhere before I started my journey. And what I'm trying to really present here is the fact that I wasn't a born athlete. I had, my own issues with food. I had my own issues with managing my time. But when I was able to associate with a group of people who were doing this, I found the inspiration to, get organized and do what I love. I primarily love running, cycling, and swimming. That is obviously there, but sometimes we are not able to do what we love simply because we're not able to, get organized and not able to find the motivation. Some people are very self-motivated, especially athletes, but some of us who have, our other responsibilities, we sometimes need that extra bit of motivation from others. And that's where, when I started running with Hyderabad Runners and when I met other cyclists in the city, I found a way to stick to this thing. I mean, I know when I have to go and run with a group, there's someone there in the morning waiting for me. I find that motivation to get out more easily rather than, if I was to do this alone, sometimes I find it very difficult to stay self-motivated. So that is how my whole journey started. And then I started doing a lot of races. I started off with the full marathon, and thereafter, I didn't do the half marathon. As such, it would be a smart thing to do the half marathon. Now I realize that. But sort of the terminology made me feel like, hey, it's a half of something, But it's much later that I realized that every sport has its own charm. What you can do in a half marathon is completely different from full marathons are all about holding yourself back, kind of conserving your energy and being smart about it. Whereas the half marathon gives us an opportunity to really go out and, race hard compared to, so for me, when I think of the full marathon, the race really begins after the 30th kilometer. For those of you who don't know, it's like a 42-kilometer race. Until 30th, you're actually just trying to hold yourself back. And it's so different from, let's say, cycling, I keep telling this to people that when you go to bicycle races, you are really, really, trying to keep up with the group, because cycling as a sport, I don't know if you people have watched cycling races like Tour de France, you'll see that, they'll have pelotons there, and it's all about conserving energy, trying to stay with the group so that you can conserve energy. But the important aspect is there's a lot of strategy involved. It's not just you managing yourself. You have to be able to stick with the whole peloton in order to be able to survive the race. So it's so much about actually holding on in cycling as compared to marathons where you're holding back, kind of conserving and being smart about it. So, you have to, as a triathlete, be able to, if you are doing 3 sports individually, you have to be able to kind of think of them individually and kind of develop strategies and train accordingly. And what has really helped me in my journey, after I started off, I had many instances where I finished on the podium. I did the, let me go to the next slide. That's the wrong button. So I did the Ironman 70.3 recently in Vietnam, and I don't know how many of you know about the Ironman races. So Ironman 70.3 involves 1.9 kilometers of swimming in the ocean, then 90 kilometers of biking, and then a half marathon, a 21-kilometer run. So again, the whole aspect of dealing with 3 sports is very unique. A lot of people are involved in one sport. It's also tough, but here it is unique in the way that you have to be able to manage 3 sports in your schedules. So a lot of planning comes into picture here. And whenever there's bicycle involved, it's an equipment, right? So again, there's a whole different world out there. Managing your equipment, you have to be really good. Sometimes you are very well prepared for a race, but your equipment fails. And sometimes it's the athlete who's, it's a failure on the part of the athlete. So those aspects come into the picture. And I kind of enjoy all of that. I mean, I'm not a very tech-savvy guy, but when it comes to bicycles, I really like taking care of my bicycle. And because that's part of the sport. It's such an interesting aspect, new technology coming up, ways to improve, there's aerodynamics. So I recently met my old friend from school. He happens to teach aerodynamics in the Air Force. So we were discussing, comparing aerodynamics in the world of cycling versus aerodynamics in the world of, so if you meet a cyclist, right, I mean, especially a professional cyclist, they'll say aero is everything. So even in a triathlon, if you see this picture, right, if you see the way it's positioned, you look at the bike, they're all in a way that you can get as aerodynamic as possible. So it's not just about you developing power, and stamina and all of that. When it comes to cycling, it's also about having the right equipment, making sure you're positioned in your way, your clothing is such that it kind of helps you, be aerodynamic and save as much energy as possible. So especially the world of cycling, it's actually equal strength and strategy. You have to get everything right in order to be able to be successful. And the whole aspect of cycle racing with our teams involved. So if you've noticed that in the pelotons, people will generally have roles and responsibilities for each team player. Sometimes when you just look at the race, it feels like it's a group, a whole mass moving, but they actually have proper strategies where they decide, who's the guy who's going to gun for the finish line, and they'll protect that guy from the wind and help him conserve energy as much as possible. So it's all about strategy, and that really is what makes it interesting. But for a layman, someone who's not involved in cycling, they probably don't realize that. They think, in a team sport like football, they generally associate strategies. But cycling as a sport also is a game for someone, a sport for someone who likes a little bit of mental challenge and likes a little bit of tactics and strategies involved. So very, very interesting sport. And I think the sport is picking up slowly in India. We are having a lot of races. We're having stage races. I recently went to a race in Thailand, which is a stage race. It's the closest possible race that one from India can do, where he can get a little bit of exposure of stage racing. And when you say stage racing, it's basically about racing day after day after day. Some of you might be aware, but it's basically almost cycling about 100, 120 kilometers every day. You're really sore after the end of it, and next day again you have to wake up. You're probably very, very, very sore, but you still have to wake up and do a whole new race of 100 kilometers. So again, the key in such kind of races is being able to deliver that day, but then come back immediately. I mean, the minute you cross the finish line on that day, you immediately start thinking about recovery. You see all the other athletes heading to their van and start taking recovery drinks. They start, go back to the hotel and start their massages. All of this is so important, and this is something which gets completely ignored in India. People don't think about these things. They just focus on training very hard, but that's not enough. You have to be smart. You have to manage everything really well. And that kind of expertise has to be brought into India. We don't have enough, I would say, guidance in those terms. I mean, there will be people who teach cycling, but the reason why we have not been able to progress is we are lacking in some of these areas. We are lacking in terms of strategizing. We are lacking in terms of taking care of recovery of athletes. So that is one direction where I see a lot of work needs to happen in India. But there are good signs. A lot of stuff is happening. I myself will be traveling abroad to a lot of countries to work with coaches there, to work with sports scientists, sports nutritionists there, so that we can get some of that expertise back to India. And talking about this race, I mean, this was my debut race. So in my debut race, I finished 8th on the All India ranking and 11th on the 11th on the bike leg and 8th on the run leg. So there is a lot of possibility. So I have now actually quit my job in Deloitte and taken this up full time. I am thank you. I'm heading to Turkey in October to challenge all the other triathletes out there. There are also, I've also, in order to sustain myself, I've started coaching other people, preparing them for these races. I'm coaching them for running, cycling, and triathlon multisports. So some of my athletes, some of the people I'm coaching are also going to Turkey, and we are looking forward to a good race out there. So some of them are amateurs, you know, they're amateur racers, they have doctors, some of them IT professionals, but they really have this passion for triathlons. It's sort of also like a lifestyle, you know, a way to explore different countries, meet other athletes, people who are passionate, really want that exposure. And there'll be many more such races coming up, and it's an exciting road ahead. And I just hope to see more and more people, you know, showing interest in the sports, getting more active, because it's not only a good way to stay fit, but also, you know, have a good social life, travel, explore, you know, new places. And definitely it has shaped my personality. I have changed a lot ever since I got into the sport, and looking forward to, you know, more people enjoying the sport. Thank you guys for listening me out. I wasn't really prepared for this thing, right? And hope you have a good day today. All right, thank you. For those of you who don't know the race, I just want to quickly share a small video about the race in Turkey. It's like, it gives you a snippet of what it's like. So for those of you who have not seen it,